Kira thought the wrong train was the mistake, but the real turning point came later, when she boarded the right one. Because once you've been welcomed by an artisan village, you can't return to your old way of seeing. And as the bullet train carried her toward Kyoto, Japan's craft capital, Kira's knitting began to change. Quietly, row by row, into something she had never made before. The creative globe presents. Across continents and cultures, creativity takes countless forms. Each story follows a maker, an artist, or a dreamer on a journey shaped by craft, connection, and discovery. This is the Creative Globe audiobook knitting series. Kira in Japan, Part 2. The Kyoto Thread. Chapter 1. The Right Train. The New Rhythm. At Fukushima Station, the morning air felt clean and newly rinsed, like the world had been swept into order overnight. Kira stood beside Hunt near the platform markings, watching the sleek bullet train glide in with barely a sound. It didn't roar. It arrived the way Japan did everything, precisely, quietly, as if courtesy had become a machine. Hunt handed her a small paper bag. "For the ride," he said. "A bento." Kira blinked. "Oh, I don't want to eat on the train if you're not supposed to." Hunt smiled, amused. "You can eat bento on long-distance trains, just quietly. No mess. And no phone calls." She nodded, already grateful for the guidance. Japan was full of gentle rules that made everything feel calmer, like everyone had agreed to take up less space in the world. As the train pulled away, countryside unfurled in clean lines. Winter bare branches traced against pale sky, fields laid out like patchwork, little neighborhoods gathered close around stations. Kira opened her knitting bag. Her fingers found the yarn, familiar and steady. She began the quiet path. Stitch again. Simple, repeating, restrained. Columns of calm. A texture you didn't notice at first, but couldn't stop noticing once you did. She watched the landscape and let the pattern listen. And somewhere between stitches, she felt Kyoto drawing nearer. Chapter 2. Kyoto. Where the streets feel like craft. Kyoto greeted her differently than Tokyo. Tokyo had dazzled. Kyoto settled. The station was grand, an airy cathedral of steel and glass. But the moment Kira stepped into the city streets, everything shifted. Wooden facades, shop curtains moving in the breeze, narrow lanes that seemed to fold time back on itself. The sidewalks were busy, yet quiet. No loud calls, no jostling, no phones pressed to ears. People moved with that same practiced consideration, like everyone knew the choreography. Hunt guided her through a small street market where the air smelled of roasted tea, sweet bean paste, and cedar. Kira held a wrapper from a snack she'd bought, then paused, unsure. "Trash?" she whispered. Hunt chuckled softly. "Keep it until you find a bin, or back to the hotel." She tucked it neatly into her bag, strangely pleased by how even small habits here felt intentional. That evening, Kira sat by her hotel window and knitted a few more inches of the quiet path. The city lights were softer than Tokyo's, lantern warm, not neon. She realized the pattern was changing, not louder, not flashier, more certain. Chapter 3. The Gallery of Knitting as Art. The next day, Hunt brought her to a small gallery tucked behind a tea shop. The sign outside was modest, just black characters on pale wood. Inside, the air smelled faintly of paper and incense. The floor creaked softly. Shoes came off at the threshold. Slippers waited in perfect alignment. Kira followed the ritual without being told. She was learning. The gallery walls held textiles that didn't look like knitting, the way Kira had always known it. These were sculptural. One piece rose like waves frozen mid-breath. Another hung in layers that mimicked falling water. A third looked like mist caught in yarn, so delicate it seemed impossible. Kira's throat tightened. "This is knitting?" she whispered. A woman appeared from the back room, tall, calm, with silver threaded through her dark hair. Her presence was quiet, but it changed the whole room, like a candle being lit. "I am Madoka," she said in English, with a gentle bow. "You are a knitter." Kira bowed back, a little too quickly. Yes. Yes. Madoka's eyes drifted to Kira's bag. "May I see your work?" Kira hesitated, then offered her knitting. Madoka studied the quiet path stitch with a kind seriousness. "This is a good beginning," she said. "It has restraint. It has space. That is rare." Kira felt herself glow. "I didn't mean to. It just happened." Madoka smiled. "That is often where real art begins." Chapter 4. Urushi, the Discipline of Shine. Madoka invited Kira to join her for a visit to an Urushi studio, traditional lacquer work, where surfaces were built slowly, layer by layer, until they held a deep, living shine. They walked through an older neighborhood where wooden homes pressed close together and small gardens hid behind fences. The street was quiet enough that Kira could hear the click of her own footsteps. In the studio, the air was warm and controlled. Shelves held bowls and ceramics in various stages, some dull, some glowing like still water. The artisan explained in Japanese. Kira looked to Hunt. He translated softly. "Urushi is not rushed. If you hurry, the finish will betray you." The artisan demonstrated with a brush so fine it looked like a single hair. The lacquer went on in a thin whisper. Then the piece was set aside, left to cure in humidity. Madoka watched Kira's face. "Do you see?" she asked. Kira nodded slowly. "It's like tension in knitting. If you force it, the fabric tells on you." Madoka's eyes warmed. "Yes, and if you allow it, it becomes something you can't fake." That night, Kira knit the quiet path stitch more deliberately. She let the yarn relax. She let the fabric breathe. The pattern began to shine, quietly, like lacquer. Chapter 5. Shippo, the colours that stay. The next craft was Shippo, cloisonné enamel, where metal lines formed little cells that held colour like stained glass. The workshop was bright with bowls of powdered enamel, blues like sky after rain, greens like moss, reds like lacquered gates. A master artisan explained. Hunt translated in low tones. "Shippo means 7 treasures," Hunt said, "but it also means something that lasts." Kira watched as the artisan laid fine wires onto a surface, creating tiny boundaries. Then enamel powder was tapped in, colour placed with care. The piece went into the kiln, emerged transformed, then was polished until it gleamed. Kira stared. "It's like colour work, but permanent." Madoka nodded. "And it is controlled by boundaries." Kira returned to her knitting that afternoon and made a small decision. Within the quiet path stitch, she introduced a single thin line of colour, just one, like a hidden river. Not enough to shout. Just enough to remember Kyoto. Chapter 6. A light obstacle. the closed workshop. The next morning, Kira and Hunt arrived at a studio she'd been eager to see, only to find the door closed, a small sign posted. Kira's shoulders fell. "Oh no." Hunt read it and smiled. "They are closed today for a local observance." Kira sighed. "I keep forgetting I don't understand anything." "You understand more than you think," Hunt said gently. "You've been watching, listening." Madoka arrived a moment later, holding a small umbrella. "Come," she said. "Kyoto always has another door." They walked down a narrow lane that smelled of rain on stone. A bicycle passed silently. A shopkeeper bowed as they went by. Madoka led them to a paper studio, washi, where sheets were lifted from water like clouds becoming solid. Kira watched the fibre settle into form, the softness, the patience. That night, Kira realized the quiet path stitch had become her way of absorbing Japan when words weren't available. She didn't speak Japanese, but her hands were becoming fluent. Chapter 7. The tea ceremony that changes everything. Madoka invited Kira to a small tea gathering, more formal this time. The room was minimal. A hanging scroll, a single flower in a vase, nothing extra, everything meaningful. Kira removed her shoes at the threshold, grateful she no longer had to be reminded. She sat carefully, watching. The host moved with slow precision, each tool placed as if it mattered deeply. The bowl was turned, the tea whisked. Silence held like a soft blanket. Kira realized something. The quiet wasn't emptiness, it was attention. Afterward, Madoka spoke quietly. "You knit with the same principle now. You leave space. You let the fabric speak." Kira swallowed. "I didn't realize I was changing." Madoka looked at her steadily. "Most people don't. Not while it's happening." Kira walked back through the lantern-lit streets, feeling altered in a gentle way, like a stitch pattern settling into its final shape. That night, she worked the quiet path stitch with reverence, not as a project, as a practice. Chapter 8. Knitting becomes artwork. Madoka invited Kira into her private studio. It was not grand. It was calm. A table, a dress form, shelves of yarn arranged by tone, stone, fog, tea, cedar, ash. Madoka laid out knitted pieces that looked like landscapes. One was shaped like a mountain ridge. One draped like falling water. One formed a three-dimensional curve that reminded Kira of temple rooflines. Kira whispered, "How do you do this?" Madoka placed yarn in her hands. "Stop thinking of knitting as making an object. Think of it as making a feeling." She studied Kira's quiet path fabric. "This has the beginning of structure," she said. "Now you will give it intention." Madoka demonstrated how to shape the fabric subtly, how to let certain sections rise, others fall, so the knit itself became sculptural. Not complicated, just purposeful. Kira felt tears prick her eyes. For the first time, she understood what she'd been searching for in Japan. Not a souvenir. A new way of seeing her own craft. Chapter 9. Creative Triumph. The Kyoto Wrap. Kira spent the next day finishing her piece. It became a wrap, soft, wearable, but undeniably artistic. The quiet path stitch formed its foundation. Orderly columns like rice fields, calm like Kyoto streets. Within it, her single line of color ran like a hidden river, Shippo inspired. At the edges, she shaped the fabric gently, Madoka's influence, so it draped like mist against the shoulders, like temple eaves against sky. When she showed Madoka, The older woman said nothing at first. She simply bowed, a deep bow. Then she looked up. You have made something that carries place. Kira laughed through the sudden wetness in her eyes. I didn't know knitting could do this. Madoka's voice was soft. It always could. You simply had to arrive at the right rhythm. Chapter 10. The Return, the Next Thread. On her last morning in Kyoto, Kira walked early, streets barely awake, shop curtains still tied back, the air cool with quiet promise. She carried her wrap, folded carefully in her bag, like something alive. At the station, Hunt stood beside her. You made it to Kyoto, he said. Kira smiled. Eventually. He looked at her with warmth. You were never lost. On the train out, Kira didn't scroll her phone. She didn't call anyone. She simply watched the landscape. Fields, towns, rivers, Japan passing like a long exhale. She pulled out her knitting. Not because she needed distraction, because the quiet path had become her way of listening. And as the train carried her forward, Kira understood something she would never forget. The wrong train had brought her to kindness. The right train had brought her to mastery. And somewhere beyond Kyoto, beyond Japan, another craft, another place, another story was already waiting for her hands. Thank you for listening to The Creative Globe. If this story inspired you, subscribe for more creative journeys around the world. A new adventure awaits.